You know, there's an ancient midrash that says that if all Jews would go to services 2 times in a row, the Messiah would arrive. So we're a little light this week, but, you know, Yom Kippur, we all had them. So a number of things come to mind. First of all, as they say in the South, you're not really from here unless you have family buried in the cemetery. And I'm proud to say that my family's on the front row. You know, I can just drive by. I don't even have to get out of the car and wave. And the idea of it is that the way that I perceive what I'm really trying to say today is metaphor, because it's really almost impossible to talk about the divine in terms of direct translations. So last week we were talking about Avinu Malkeinu, my father, my king, you know, and your father you can kind of approach sometimes, and your father realizes is that he has to hold your feet to the fire because life is not easy. And if he makes it too easy for you, then you may not strive hard enough to make it in the world. The king, on the other hand, you know, cuts you no slack. Either you do it right or you do it wrong, and he's judging that. But fortunately, there is another presence in Judaism that's really not referred to very often, and that is the Shekinah. And the Shekinah is the divine presence that we can actually emote, we can actually feel, we can actually impress upon ourselves the divine, and it's usually referred to in the feminine. And of course, here at Beth Meyer, we have so much Shekinah energy that it's a real blessing to pray here, because it allows us access to reach that divine presence. And sometimes you say, well, you know, I don't see the Shekinah in the Torah. You know, I read every portion this year, and Shekinah never showed up once. But the reality is that, and maybe this is Judaism in general, you know, they don't want you to make it too easy. You know, you have to strive to really reach it. You know, if we just hand it to you, you don't get it. So you can literally take the first 4 words in the Bible, which we'll be reading next week, Bereshit Baruch Elohim et, right? And we know that B is in, so it gets translated as in the beginning, but Reshit is also used in the Torah as first fruits. So we could literally translate the first passage in the Bible to say God's first fruit was Aleph and Tav. And Aleph and Tav is et, which is a preposition that always holds the space between the next object. And it's like Alpha and Omega. It's the first Hebrew letter. It's the last Hebrew letter. So some can say that God's first fruit was literally the alphabet, and that by giving us the alphabet, we could begin the conversation. We could begin the communication of receiving God's teachings, and more importantly, giving it back to God. You know, I think God, we say to ourselves, well, God knows what I'm thinking, so why should I bother to come to shul and pray? Because he's thinking that all the time. And the reality is that you have to participate. You can't just say, I'm ready, because you're not. You haven't done any work to receive it. So you can literally, every time that you read Torah and read this et, this preposition, which appears in the Torah over and over and over, you can use it as a metaphor to represent the Shekinah. And the Shekinah, therefore, is present since the beginning. You got Elohim, and then you got et. You got mother, and you got father. Mother, you got a chance. You know, she loves you no matter what. You know, you can be a murderer. She'll still love you. Dad, you know, is going to be judgmental about you. So every time that you can take this concept of the Shekinah as the space between the objects, and, you know, you could use it as a metaphor in painting. You know, if you look at an object that's in the middle of the painting, that's the object, but the space around that object is really what makes it a famous painting, if it be famous. And it's because the artist is painting the light. The artist is painting that space, that shape that's around the object. Same thing is true in music. You know, that there's 12 notes, and you can go from Beethoven to Frank Zappa. They all use the same 12 notes, But the space around those notes creates the masterpiece. It creates what we hear, da-da-da-da, etc. You know, it's like Miles Davis has got a song that he doesn't come in until the 24th bar, and yet you know that that's Miles Davis. How do you know that? It's just a presence. So we have the ability to receive this energy, and unfortunately, you have to practice it. You have to participate in it. You have to speak to it. There is a hitbolot, which is where you go out into nature, into a sacred spot, and stop and focus and look around you and see how magnificent the world is. And at that point, you start the conversation with the Creator. And whether it's the Shekinah or the Adonai, the Lord on high, however you need to manifest it, this is the presence that's coming at us at all times. And we can miss it. It's really easy to miss it because if you don't practice it, if you don't participate in it, if you don't notice it, it just passes you right by. And then we all get caught up in the illusion of time, thinking that I have control over what's actually going on. And the reality is none of us have control. All of us are just living our moment. And I would encourage you to say that if you can live the moment fully present by being in nature, you really can begin to have an expression of what the divine feels like. So I introduce all of this as a metaphor because of what's going on in the garden. And the garden is an entry spot for all of us. But the problem is that our modern day culture has presented us with food that comes from the grocery store. And, you know, and every piece of produce is perfect and there's no spots on it and it's not growing irregularly. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not how produce grows. In fact, I'm here to tell you that what I have discovered about farming is that you get to choose the rate with which you want to lose your money. So if you want to lose a lot of money up front, come in with a big bang. If you want to lose a little bit over each year, which is the approach that Anya and I are taking, you can go for quite a while longer that way. And think about it, you know, here you are farming, and who's your partner, right? God. Well, you're in trouble right off the bat because it's not going to rain this week. It's going to get too hot. It's going to get dried out. It's just, you know, and you can pray all day long, you know, please, God, give me, you know, it's just not going to happen. But the participation in that process will keep you humble because you will be so appreciative of whatever it is that you produce. You will notice every little nuance of what's going on by doing it day in and day out. You know, unfortunately, we're all so distracted, I guess is the best way to put it. You know, we have these handheld devices. We're on it all the time. Heaven forbid that we actually talk to the person that's in the same room with each other. And being in nature is a way of focusing yourself so that the distraction is not there. And Sukkot is a perfect example. We get into a temporary structure. It eliminates time. It eliminates our influence. And it eliminates our feeling of being in control and asks us to be humble enough to receive what's going on in this world. The divine is coming at us all the time. And our arrogance prevents us from doing this. Now, again, I'm kind of speaking in metaphor a little bit, so I'm going to throw in a little bit of a cosmological approach, and that is if we break all of this down to the atom, you know, that we've got the nucleus and the proton and electrons are spinning around, right? So the proton has a positive charge, and the electron is balanced off by the proton. The neutron is attracting quarks. Now, you know, for hearing an old guy to hear quarks just sounds like something I would like, you know, irregardless. But but my point is that I'm of the mindset that we can tune ourselves into the ability to pick up on this energy, this balance that's going on with the neutron and these quarks. And I often describe it as an energy that we can't see or touch, but yet we know is there. And so prayer is a perfect example of that. Last week, we were all here together, and there was something tangible in the room. You know, we could feel it with each other. The community created a presence. Other times, we might think it's an intuition. Like, how did I know to sell Irregardless on December 31st, 2019? And COVID started 2020. You know, it's an energy that's there. You can tune into it, and you can make it work, and you can find yourself smiling a lot when it happens, but you can't prove it to anybody. And that's the difference between faith and science. I'm taking a little bit of science and, you know, fracturing it a little bit, but also giving you a pattern as to how you can relate to this energy that's always there. So with all of that said, it brings us to the garden. It brings us to an entry point. And Anya wanted me to definitely mention what the mission statements are at the Well-Fed Community Garden. It aims to support a more generous, just, and sustainable world by offering earth-based community-building experiences that integrate all spiritual faith, traditions, regenerative agriculture, and food justice. And that is such a Jewish statement, isn't it? I mean, isn't Torah really all about how can a community live together, right? And be equal and fair to each other. You know, what's our very first prayer is how goodly are your tents, O Jacob? And what happened was they were looking at the top of a mountain, they looked down at us camping down there, and at least we had enough society to say, well, I'll turn my front tent door this way, and you turn yours that way, and you turn yours that way. So when I look at it, I don't have to wake up in the morning and watch you take care of business. You know, there's a certain, you know, respect. And that's really what Torah is it's an example of how to live in community and how to respect each other. And what we're discovering through the Well-Fed Community Garden is that it's an entry point. Not everybody can get it coming to a shul. Not everybody understands the Hebrew. Not everybody understands the prayer. But all of us understand our prayers when we say it to ourselves so that the Shekinah or Adonai can hear it. But more importantly, all of this is in a tradition referred to as the Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah, really, Kabbalat Shabbat, really just means the ability to receive, to be able to create a container that can receive the divine presence and allow you to procreate that into the world that we all live in together. And if all of us did that, then the Messiah would be here. You know, unfortunately, the Ten Commandments are always written in the negative. You know, don't do this, don't do that, because they don't have time to tell you all the positive things that you should be doing. But the reality is when it says don't take the Lord's name in vain, in what? In vain. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. What he's really implying is spend all day praising God. You don't have time to worry about taking his name in vain because you're just talking about all the magnificent things that are happening in this world and how we're all so blessed to have that presence. We can choose to embrace it or we can just ignore it, and we all know how that's working. So the vision statement for the mission for the Well-Fed Garden is we envision a world in which all members of our Wake County community come together to grow and share healthy food, care for the land, help their neighbors, and strengthen the connection they have with each other. So it's a welcoming. So in essence, this is a spiel to try and get you to come over there and just participate. Nothing fancy will happen. You know, there's a lot of fire ants. You got to be careful you don't get bit by those. There's bugs all over the place. And what I'm learning about farming is that between the weather not working in your favor, and then you have the nematodes that are destroying the roots of everything that you have, and then you have insects that come and eat what you've grown, you've got no chance, really, of what's going on. But it doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean that you don't keep doing it, because as we know, all of the major religions are based on how we treat the planet. You know, we start off by God saying, I'm giving you the heavens and the earth. And it's up to us. It says that we have dominion over this to make it better and to not make it worse. And unfortunately, right now, we seem to be divided politically, and we're not the United States any longer. We're either money or not money. We're either socialist or we're radical. It really doesn't matter. That's not the point of today's conversation. So the thing that, again, just to kind of give you the other things that are in Torah that make you want to go to the garden, that make you want to sit in the sukkah and notice the blessings and how marvelous this world really is that we have Bal Tashlit, ethical consumption. We have Shemitah, honoring the natural cycles of the earth. We have Peah, lining the corners of one's fields with food for the strangers and the poor. Kamut, ecological sustainability. Ma'aser, reserving at least 1/10 of one's agricultural produce for the poor. Kavod Barut, the dignity of all creation. Hanasat Orhim, welcoming guests. Haganat Ovodim, fair treatment of those who work in the fields. Tasar Ba'alecham, kind, humane treatment of the animals. And Tikkun Olam, healing the world. So we hope that we can invite you to step outside, pay attention to nature, pray in the language that you speak. It doesn't have to be Hebrew, trust me. Shekinah and Adonai speak all languages. It started off with those letters, Aleph and Tav, and it continues to this day. And the last thing I would like to say is I'm also a big fan of mycelium. So mycelium is what's literally holding the whole planet together. So you've got photosynthesis taking place at the top of the tree. You've got cellulite that brings it down to the soil, and then the root system in the soil is being sponsored literally by the mycelium. It's just it's like a trade organization. I got carbon and oxygen coming off of the photosynthesis, and I'll trade you carbon for magnesium and copper, and then the mycelium will bring it all to you. It's intelligence without having to have a brain, and we're all thinking that we're the only intelligent creatures left, and I'm glad to say not so fast. And recently, as they were showing pictures of outer space, the black space, and then they saw all these worlds and constellations that are out there even further out, and they're showing how planets are just beginning to form. And you look at it, and it looks exactly like the network of mycelium. I mean, it looks like it's just happening at a universal level, and that it's affecting us all the way down to this planet. So it's an entry point into experiencing the divine. It's available to us at all times. I highly recommend it. This year in the Sukkot, look around, pay attention, and more importantly, if you get a chance, either start a garden in your own yard and just see how much trouble it is to try and grow a zucchini, or come volunteer at the Well-Fed Garden and get an opportunity to get a little bit more professional background as to how what we have learned that doesn't work. And we'll try and figure out to find things that do work. So I hope that's an understanding.
Yasher Koach, Reb Arthur. Kol hakavod, beautiful job as usual with the